It's small, it's slow, and it barely has any power. The Mini Cooper is the exact opposite of what you would expect from a race car. Yet still, it managed to win 3 times at one of the most prestigious races in the world. So how did this car with an engine smaller than what powers most lawnmowers outperform machines with 4 times its displacement? To find out how, we need to go back to 1956, when Britain was in serious trouble. This incident, also known as the Suez Crisis, caused fuel prices to skyrocket in Britain, leading petrol rationing to make a comeback. As a result, the streets of London, once dominated by proper British motors, were being invaded by tiny German bubble cars. These cars weren't exactly pretty, but they sipped fuel when everything else guzzled it. One man, however, was unhappier than anyone about this change. Leonard Lord, chairman of the British Motor Corporation, watched this German invasion with disgust. He wanted to solve this problem as soon as possible, and knew exactly who could solve it. Enter Alec Issigonis, an engineering genius and designer of the compact Morris Minor. Alec, however, wasn't exactly given an easy task by Mr. Lord. In fact, it seemed like an almost impossible challenge. Create a car that could fit in a box just 10 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet tall, while still seating 4 adults. But Issigonis wasn't just any engineer, and his approach to the Mini's design was quite unconventional. While other designers started with the styling, Issigonis began with a blank sheet and one revolutionary question. What if we turn the engine sideways? This one simple question led to the Mini's most radical innovation: a transverse-mounted engine with the transmission underneath driving the front wheels. It was a layout virtually unheard of at the time, but one that would eventually become the standard for small cars worldwide. By pushing the wheels out to the absolute corners of the car, it became miraculously spacious inside. The Mini finally launched in 1959, but its reception wasn't how BMC would have hoped for. You see, on paper, the Mini looked pathetically underpowered. Sales were sluggish in the first months as Britons tried to wrap their heads around this strange new machine. Its 848 cubic centimeter engine produced just 34 horsepower, a figure that would embarrass even the most modest modern appliances. If that wasn't disappointing enough, it had a top speed of barely 70 miles per hour. However, when drivers actually got behind the wheel, they noticed something magical. The Mini's lightness, combined with its wide stance, gave it handling that felt more like a go-kart than a car. It darted through corners while larger, more powerful cars wallowed and rolled. More and more drivers fell in love with it. But when a certain man got behind the wheel, it would change the trajectory of this car entirely. John Cooper, a man who had already revolutionized Formula One, recognized the untapped potential lurking within the Mini. He believed the Mini could be transformed into a high-performance racing car. BMC were reluctant, but with enough persistence, they eventually agreed to produce a limited run of just 1,000 versions of Cooper's modified Mini, the Mini Cooper. The transformation from economy car to giant killer began with a series of carefully calculated modifications. Cooper increased the engine's displacement, bumping it up to 997 cubic centimeters. But the real magic came from the addition of twin SU carburetors that allowed the tiny engine to breathe more freely. The Mini was already nimble. Now it had transformed into something truly special. And despite BMC's lack of confidence, early competition successes proved Cooper had been right all along. Pat Moss, sister of the legendary Stirling Moss, demonstrated the Mini Cooper's lofty potential, as she won 2 rally competitions in 1962. These victories were huge. They showed that the Mini's supreme agility could overcome its power deficit on twisting rally stages where handling mattered more than brute force. But the Mini Cooper wasn't done there. The ultimate iteration arrived in the form of the Cooper S, which featured an increased engine capacity of 1,275 cubic centimeters that produced approximately 90 horsepower. But let's put that in perspective. This was still a fraction of what competitors were working with, and many rival rally cars boasted engines 3 times as powerful. But the Mini had a different strength. It wasn't about creating the most powerful engine or the fastest straight-line speed. Instead, it represented a fundamental rethinking of performance car design. Its front-wheel drive layout provided exceptional traction coming out of corners, and its lightweight construction meant it could change direction with an agility that made heavier vehicles seem positively ponderous by comparison. But the ultimate test still lay ahead. The prestigious Monte Carlo Rally represented the pinnacle of rally competition, a grueling event where powerful American V8s and sophisticated German engineering typically dominated. The winding mountain roads and unpredictable conditions of Monte Carlo had humbled many great cars and drivers over the years. So then, how could a car with an engine smaller than most motorcycles truly compete against purpose-built machines with 3 times the power? January 24th, 1964. Was Monte Carlo really about to witness automotive history's greatest underdog story? The contrast couldn't have been starker. Tiny British compacts facing off against thundering Ford Falcons that packed more than 4 times their power. On paper, the contest seemed laughable, and the rally's brutal format did these underdogs no favors. Could the Mini Cooper really survive these straightaways, where they'd lose so much time? But once it got to the stage through the Col de Turini, temperatures plummeted and roads transformed into glassy ribbons of ice. And it's here where something remarkable happened. Where powerful cars struggled for traction, the nimble Mini found its element. On treacherous downhill sections, driver Hopkirk carried the car at impossible speeds through corners, while larger cars cautiously crept along. And when they crossed the finish line, the motorsport world collectively gasped. Number 37, the little Mini Cooper S, had clinched overall victory against the most sophisticated machinery in rallying. Fans were ecstatic. And back in Britain, 4 mop-topped musicians took notice. The Mini transcended from mere machine to cultural icon. And if competitors thought this win was a fluke, 1965 hammered home the message. Conditions were even more brutal, with snow and ice coating much of the course. But Finnish driver Timo Mäkinen did something otherworldly. He completed the entire rally without incurring a single penalty point. But as BMC anticipated the crowning achievement in 1966, what followed became one of motorsport's most controversial chapters. Officials disqualified all 3 Minis on a technicality. But the tenuous nature of the disqualification only enhanced the Mini's reputation as the establishment-rattling underdog that had to be stopped by clipboard warriors. It wasn't just about winning a race. The Mini Cooper fundamentally altered how we think about car design. What was once radical engineering has become the industry standard, influencing countless vehicles across generations. But perhaps the Mini's most enduring legacy is philosophical. It proved conclusively that bigger isn't always better, that clever engineering can triumph over brute force. This car remains the automotive history's perfect underdog.